Something strange happens right before everything changes, and most people think it means they're falling apart. Your mind races even when nothing urgent is happening. Emotions you can't name blend together in ways that feel completely unfamiliar. You're calm on the surface, while pressure builds inside your chest. You know something is ending, but you can't identify what. You sense something beginning, but you can't describe it. Your intuition screams louder than logic, yet you don't understand what it's saying. This isn't confusion. This is the unmistakable signal that your future is about to override your past. You're not breaking down. You're standing in the exact threshold where your old identity dissolves and a new one tries to take its place. And what you do in this moment, in this invisible transition that nobody talks about, will determine which timeline becomes your reality.
Something unusual happens right before your life changes, and most people mistake it for a sign that something is wrong. Your mind speeds up even when nothing urgent is happening. Your emotions blend together in ways you've never felt before. You feel strangely calm, while a quiet pressure builds inside your chest. You sense that something is ending, but you can't name it. You sense that something is beginning, but you can't describe it. Your intuition feels louder than your thoughts, yet you don't know what it's trying to say. This internal contradiction isn't a problem, it's a signal, one that only appears when your future is about to override your past. Your life isn't shaped during the big moments where everything finally makes sense. Your life is shaped right here, in this private liminal transition that almost no one talks about. The space between the identity you're shedding and the identity that's trying to take your place. You might think you're confused, overwhelmed, or not yourself, but what's actually happening is far more profound. Your energy is reorganizing in the background, and your nervous system is trying to catch up. Quantum physics calls this kind of moment a destabilized field state, the point where old patterns lose their charge and new probabilities begin to cluster around you. You feel it not because you're failing, but because your past can no longer predict who you're becoming. Your mind keeps trying to sort your emotions into old categories. Am I anxious? Am I excited? Is this fear? Is this peace? But nothing fits anymore. You're trying to label an identity that already expired. This is what crossing a threshold actually feels like. And the reason it feels so strange is simple. The universe is already responding to a version of you that hasn't fully landed yet. Something in you already chose a new timeline. Your mind just hasn't processed the decision. Look at your recent thoughts. How often have you felt pulled toward change, even if you can't explain why? How often have you felt done with something that used to define you? A pattern, a relationship, a role, a version of yourself that you could once tolerate, but now feels too heavy, too small, too outdated. How often have you had the sense that you're walking away from a chapter you haven't even fully understood? That's not confusion. That's alignment, rearranging your inner world. When this begins, your old self doesn't let go quietly. It fights for relevance. It tries to keep you familiar, predictable, safe, small. Meanwhile, the emerging version of you pulls in the opposite direction, not with force, but with inevitability. That internal tug of war isn't emotional instability, it's identity restructuring. You're trying to operate with two operating systems at once, and only one of them can survive the transition. And this is the part almost nobody realizes. Your future isn't determined by your desire. It's determined by the energetic sequence you follow during this exact transition. There is a specific order to how your energy must shift. Not a ritual, not a technique, not a journaling exercise. An internal sequence. When this sequence unfolds correctly, your life moves faster. Opportunities align. Old timelines collapse. New ones stabilize. Everything begins to flow in a way you've never experienced. But when the sequence is disrupted or reversed, you get stuck in emotional loops, repeating old chapters even after you've outgrown them. And if you're watching this right now, it's because the sequence has already begun inside you. You didn't initiate it. Your future did. Something in the field responded to your frequency months before you realized it. Something in you said, enough. And the universe began reorganizing everything around that single decision. You may feel like you're walking through a fog, but you're actually walking through a portal. You may feel like nothing is happening, but your timeline is being rewritten under your feet. You may feel like you're losing pieces of yourself, but those pieces were never meant to survive your next chapter. And the reason this moment is so critical is because it won't last. Threshold states have an expiration date. Eventually, your energy chooses a direction, and whichever direction it stabilizes into becomes your next reality. This is why what you do now matters more than anything you've done before. This is why your internal choices feel heavier than usual. This is why your intuition is louder, even if you can't interpret it yet. Your future is leaning toward you. The field is waiting to see which self you will commit to. The next version of you is already broadcasting from the quantum level, and you're feeling the echo. The question is not whether your life is going to change. It is going to change. The question is whether you will follow the one manifestation sequence that turns this transition into the future you've been sensing. And that sequence begins with the inner war you're already feeling. In the comments, drop one word that describes what you're feeling in this transition. Maybe it's unsettled. Maybe it's ready. Maybe it's shifting. Maybe it's something uniquely yours. Let that word be a small but profound declaration, a signal you send not just in this space, but into the quantum field itself. If you've been feeling like your mind is moving too fast, your emotions are blending together, or your inner world is shifting in unpredictable ways, it's not because you're losing control. It's because two different versions of you are trying to occupy the same space, and only one of them is meant to survive. This friction is not dysfunction. It's the unmistakable signature of an identity dissolving, while a new one forms beneath it. Your old self doesn't disappear quietly. It tries to bargain. It tries to negotiate. It tries to keep you loyal to familiar patterns, even when those patterns no longer feel natural. You might notice yourself reaching for habits you've already outgrown, replaying memories that used to define you, or trying to think your way into clarity that can only come through surrender. The old self is predictable, structured, logical. It wants everything labeled. This emotion means this. This sensation means that. This fear must be a warning. This discomfort must mean something is wrong. But what if nothing is wrong? What if your mind is the only thing struggling to accept what your energy already knows? The new self emerging inside you doesn't explain itself. It doesn't give you labels or categories. It speaks through intuition, through sudden clarity, through quiet knowing, through the pull toward a reality your conscious mind hasn't fully processed yet. This new self feels like peace and urgency in the same breath. It feels like relief and discomfort sitting next to each other. It feels like you're being stretched wider than your previous identity can hold. You're not confused. You're expanding. Quantum physics explains this with decoherence. When systems shift into a new state, they become unstable before becoming clear. Everything shakes loose. Everything reveals its true frequency. Your old identity is vibrating out of alignment with your next timeline, and your body can feel the mismatch. You're not meant to analyze this phase. You're meant to outgrow it. But the mind hates losing control. It tries to categorize emotions the way it used to. It tries to assign meaning to sensations it has never felt before. It wants to create safety by labeling something that can only be understood once it's complete. This creates a psychological paradox. Chaos inside calm, fear inside peace, excitement inside grief, hope inside exhaustion. You're experiencing multiple emotional layers at once because you're not operating from a single identity anymore. You're operating between identities. This is why you may feel like you're carrying an emotional weight you can't talk about with anyone. You're used to handling things alone, quietly, internally, privately. You've always been the person who goes inward to heal, processes emotions in silence, rebuilds without witnesses. And that ability has been a strength. It's what carried you through seasons of trauma, loss, rebirth, and awakening. But here's the twist. You're not isolating right now because you're wounded. You're isolating because your energy is reorganizing. The silence isn't emptiness, it's construction. Your soul is pulling you inward so you don't sabotage this transition by searching for external reassurance. You're not meant to explain what's happening to others. Most people around you don't have the emotional vocabulary or spiritual awareness to understand the magnitude of what's shifting inside you. And their reactions, even well-intentioned, would interfere with the delicate frequency recalibration happening within you. This is why you may feel like you're breaking away from old relationships, habits, environments, or identities. The energetic threads connecting you to your past are thinning because they cannot survive in the timeline you're stepping into. Some versions of you were built for survival. Some were built for resilience. Some were built for chaos. None of them were built for the future you're entering. This next chapter requires a different internal architecture. And that's why the inner war feels so intense. Your nervous system is trying to release the identity that your mind is still trying to understand. There is grief here, not because you're losing something important, but because you're shedding an emotional skin you lived in for years. Even liberation feels heavy when it requires you to detach from the person you used to be. Your past self protected you. It helped you survive. It gave you structure in seasons where everything felt uncertain. Letting it go feels like losing a familiar companion. But the new self isn't asking you to reject your past. It's asking you to outgrow it. The universe doesn't reward who you were. It responds to who you've decided to become. You don't need to decode every emotion. You don't need to analyze every thought. You don't need to fix anything inside you. You are not broken. You are transitioning. If you've been feeling this internal contradiction, if you've been experiencing emotional layers you can't explain, if you've felt yourself slipping out of your old self without fully stepping into the new one, then anchor this truth in your field. Type in the comments, "I release who I was. I allow who I'm becoming." Not as a performance, not as a ritual, but as a declaration that you're no longer negotiating with the timeline you've outgrown. Because the moment you stop trying to resurrect the old self, the manifestation sequence finally begins. And that sequence, the one that determines your future, starts revealing itself in the transition you're already inside. The shift you're living through isn't random. It's not chaos. It's not emotional instability. It's the first step of a process that almost no one recognizes consciously, yet everyone experiences before a major timeline change. Your energy is trying to follow a specific order, a sequence that determines whether your life expands or whether it repeats itself. This is the part people usually get wrong, not because they lack desire, but because they follow the right steps in the wrong order. Manifestation isn't a technique, it's an alignment sequence. Every breakthrough, every reinvention, every quantum shift follows the same inner architecture. And if you understand this architecture, you stop forcing outcomes and begin synchronizing with them. The universe doesn't respond to effort. It responds to sequence. Here is the one manifestation sequence that decides your future. 1. Release. You must let go of the self that was built for survival before anything new can take shape. The old identity must loosen its grip. Not the old habits, not the old routines. The identity, the emotional structure that determined how you interpreted your life. Release isn't about forgetting the past. It's about no longer believing that the past defines what you're allowed to receive. Quantum mechanics models this as decoherence. When a system transitions from one state to another, the old frequencies destabilize first. That destabilization feels like confusion, fatigue, emotional overload, spiritual sensitivity, or the sense that something is off. You're not malfunctioning, you're shedding. But here's where people get stuck. They try to understand the old identity before releasing it. They attempt to mentally organize a self that no longer fits. They look for closure the past can't give. Release is not intellectual. Release is energetic. It happens when you stop negotiating with who you're not. The universe can't collapse a new reality around an identity you refuse to outgrow. 2. Permission. You must allow yourself to experience a life that doesn't resemble your past. This is where almost everyone blocks their own manifestation without realizing it. They move forward on the outside, but carry the expectation of struggle on the inside. They wait for the fine print, the next setback, the next emotional storm. They assume that joy must be earned through difficulty. They brace themselves, even when life is trying to soften. Your future can't attach to you if you're still preparing for threats that no longer exist. Neuroscience explains this through predictive coding. Your brain tries to anticipate patterns based on what it has survived before. Even when your external reality changes, your internal prediction system holds you in loops of fear, scarcity, or hypervigilance. The body has learned to expect danger, so it prepares for it, even in moments of peace. Permission is the antidote. Permission is what rewrites the prediction system. Permission means allowing yourself to feel safe when nothing is threatening you. It means allowing happiness without waiting for consequences. It means accepting that your next chapter is not a continuation of your old one. It means recognizing that freedom isn't the reward. It's the foundation. Your manifestations accelerate the moment you stop expecting your blessings to hurt. If this resonates with you, hit subscribe and click the bell icon next to it. Also, join our manifestation club on gogetter.au. This isn't just a channel. This is a frequency. If you felt something shift while watching, you're already tuned in. We're not just consuming content here. We're activating the manifestation sequence. Let's keep rising together. 3. Presence. You must return to the only place where the quantum field responds instantly. Most people don't. When you're present, your energy is whole. When you're present, your frequency is clean. When you're present, the past loses its hold and the future becomes accessible. Presence is the place where your next timeline meets you. Think of it as the still point in the middle of a storm, the part of you that remains untouched by memory or prediction. When you're fully present, you stop leaking energy into imagined scenarios, past wounds, or hypothetical outcomes. Your signal becomes coherent. Your intuition becomes louder. Your decisions become clear. Presence is not quiet. Presence is powerful. It's the moment your nervous system stops bracing and starts receiving. This is why meditation, breathwork, or silence aren't practices. They're portals. They bring you back to the frequency where your future self already exists. When you enter presence consistently, you align with the identity that's manifesting your next life. Time bends for people who can stay present long enough to let the field respond. 4. Alignment. You must become the version of you that your future is asking for. This is the final step, the step most people try to start with. They jump into action while carrying the emotional signature of their old identity. They force behavior changes without having shifted the inner architecture. They act like their future self, instead of becoming the person who naturally behaves that way. Alignment is not performance. Alignment is embodiment. Alignment happens when the nervous system, the emotions, the intuition, the choices, and the energy are all tuned to the same identity. This is when the universe responds immediately. Once you hit alignment, opportunities appear without effort, synchronicities multiply, and the path ahead reveals itself at the exact moment you need it. From the outside, it looks like manifestation. From the inside, it feels like inevitability. Your future doesn't arrive through force. It arrives through coherence. This is the architecture of a new reality. And if you've felt the intensity of this transition, if you've sensed the old self dissolving, if you've noticed your emotions blending into contradictions you can't label, then you're not early. You're not late. You're already inside the sequence. The only thing left is choosing the self that will carry you through the final step, the step where you begin walking into the timeline that has been building around you silently. In the comments, share which step in the sequence you're experiencing right now: release, permission, presence, or alignment. Your awareness matters. Your sequence matters. Because you matter. You're closer to your new life than your mind can comprehend. Not because of what you've achieved, not because of the goals you've set, but because of everything you've quietly released behind the scenes. People think quantum manifestation is about calling things in, but the truth is far more subtle and far more powerful. Your future doesn't arrive when you ask for it. Your future arrives when the identity that once blocked it finally dissolves. This is why the last stretch of transformation always feels strangely heavy and strangely peaceful at the same time. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're standing at the border between two worlds. Your old self is fading, your new self is forming, and you're living inside the space where neither one has fully taken over yet. This space, this quiet, confusing, emotional in-between, is where timelines are chosen. You might feel like you're grieving parts of yourself you thought would stay forever. You might feel like you're walking away from connections, habits, or emotional structures that once gave you a sense of identity. You might feel like you've outgrown environments that used to feel comfortable. And even if the change is good, something inside you aches as you detach. That ache isn't weakness. It's the sound of a self dying with dignity. Every version of you served a purpose. Every version protected you in ways you didn't know you needed. But you're stepping into a reality where those defenses are no longer required. Your new timeline doesn't need the version of you who survived. It needs the version who can finally live. Quantum physics describes this transition beautifully. When a system shifts to a higher energy state, the old configuration collapses. It doesn't collapse because it was wrong. It collapses because it can't exist at the new frequency. Your old self isn't disappearing because you failed. It's disappearing because you succeeded. You grew beyond what it could hold, and the universe has already recognized the shift. This is why you've been sensing a quiet pull toward the unknown. Not fear, not excitement, but a gravitational certainty. Your future is not waiting for you in the distance. It's forming around you every moment you release the identity that no longer fits. The quantum field recalibrates. You're not following the path, you're generating it. For the first time in your life, you're not walking a storyline inherited from your past. You're walking a timeline you're actively creating with every choice, every insight, every surrender, every new thought you allow yourself to think. You're not becoming someone new. You're allowing the person you were always meant to become to finally take the lead. And here's the part that people never talk about. When you enter a new timeline, you lose the ability to return to the old one. Not because of karma, not because of punishment, but because your frequency no longer matches who you used to be. This is why nostalgia feels different now. This is why familiar places don't feel like home. This is why old triggers no longer hook you in the same way. This is why you're sensing a strange distance between you and the life that once felt necessary. You've already crossed the internal point of no return. Whether you realize it or not, the version of you that lived in survival has been stepping back. The version built on resilience has finished its role. The version shaped by loss, fear, patterns, or expectations is dissolving. And now you're seeing, maybe for the first time, who you actually are without all the weight you've carried. You're not meant to rebuild the past. You're meant to build the future that's been orbiting your field for years. And that future is not small. It's not subtle. It's not fragile. It's expansive. It's coherent. It's the life aligned with your soul instead of your wounds. You've spent years preparing for this chapter, often without realizing it. Every dark night of the soul, every emotional breakthrough, every intuitive nudge, every door that closed, every version of you that cracked open, it all brought you here, to this moment where your future self is finally close enough to merge. Now the question is simple. Will you anchor the frequency of who you are becoming, or will you slip back into the gravity of who you used to be? Because this next phase of your life won't be created through force, pressure, or perfection. It will be created through embodiment. Through the subtle, powerful, everyday choice to live from the identity that matches the future calling your name. If you're ready to stabilize this new frequency, to embody the version of you the quantum field has already responded to, then the next step is about depth, not speed. It's about understanding how to hold this identity long enough for your reality to organize around it. Everything you need to close this year with clarity and step into 2026 as your most aligned self is inside the Quantum Rebirth Transformation Guide. This is the ebook I designed to help you release what no longer serves, reset your frequency, and activate the identity that's been quietly waiting to emerge. If this video stirred something in you, the book is your next step. You'll find the link waiting in the pinned comment. Your timeline is changing forever. Make sure you share this video with your loved ones. You might just be the blessing in disguise they need today. Remember, you're not just sharing, you're spreading activation and alignment. And that energy will guide everyone who's ready to step into the timeline they've been sensing all along.